Thank you and welcome. Please review the video of the last candidate forum for a more complete version of my perspective, because I feel the need to focus on something else today. I think it needs to be said out loud. I don't know that it's been said out loud before. Hopefully you've begun to see my campaign signs starting to pop up around the community and trying to put into words something meaningful, something that would make each of us think about this time in our community, and rather than simply a catchy phrase for my sign, it became obvious what it should be. We cannot continue to do business as usual. Please take those words carefully, take those words seriously. We have had a dysfunctional community organization in the 15 years that I've lived here. This has created this hotbed of negativism, mistrust, and suspicion of ulterior motives throughout the community. It's a poison. It's like a cancer that continues to spread unchecked and is putting this community in a death spiral. This has got to stop now. No good is ever achieved out of a negative environment. And now, as we're in the midst of our Board of Directors election process, there are those of you who are instigating yet another recall, almost the entire board, which includes someone who hasn't even started her duties on the board yet. This is crazy. Reading the reasons for removal, I have a couple of comments. Effective leaders know how to delegate and why. Effective leadership means using your time wisely. It's about quality of time spent, not quantity of time spent. And by the way, why not the entire board if it's so dysfunctional? The good people of Hidden Valley Lake can see through this. We should be selecting our board of directors through an open election process based upon who is qualified to serve the needs of the entire community, not who can best force their own personal agenda on the rest of the community. After all this time, does anyone in this community, no matter what your particular agenda is, really think that they can force that personal agenda on the rest of the community and end up with good results? Really? Have we learned nothing? So here we go again with yet another survey. The results, as I understand, are going to be revealed next week. I wonder how many of you are happy with what's been accomplished since the last survey we did several years ago. Or better yet, maybe remind me exactly what has been accomplished since that last community survey we did several years ago. Do you feel good about the results? Unless we as a community can put together a board of directors that will represent all the community, it is likely will be, here we go again, business as usual. Our future direction for the good of this community cannot be an either-or future, either the Greenview room or the lake or the community center. We need to focus on putting together a capital improvement plan, both near and long term, develop an achievable plan of finance that supports that capital improvement plan. Plan the work, work the plan. Pretty simple, right? And then clearly communicate that plan to the community so everyone rows in the same direction towards a route that over time gets us to where we need to be. Protecting each of our beautiful assets, maintaining our infrastructure, working within our neighborhoods to improve home maintenance, promote pride and ownership while respecting the economic diversity that exists, and to the extent possible, understanding why each of us has a different view on what is the most important part of our community. It's all important. It's what makes Hidden Valley Lake beautiful and unique. Thank you.
Good afternoon. A little bit about my background that will assist me in fulfilling the duties of a director of our HOA. I started accepting responsibility as a leader at a young age, serving as an Army Sergeant in Vietnam at the age of 19. I came home in 1968, attended college as I worked in my family's grocery business in Santa Rosa. I graduated with a degree in marketing. I continued working in the family business as a store manager, supervisor, buyer, and eventually CEO. We were a union business, paid our employees top wages for the industry, and I negotiated contracts that benefited the employees and the business in the area of work rules. During those years, I served as an officer and director of trade associations, worked as part of an industry lobbying team that served as president of 2 charity boards. I also manage liquor licenses and understand ABC rules and regulations and compliance. I also am experienced in workers' comp law and how to manage experience mods that affect our premium. At the last forum, I discussed my vision for taking this community into the future. I want to discuss today what is needed above and beyond education and experience to make an effective director. I think most all homeowners come into this job wanting to do what is best for the community and have high hopes for change. When they get into the job and see the amount of work, time, and dedication the job requires, it often becomes overwhelming. The job description says 30 hours a month, but the actual time involved to conduct meetings, attend committee meetings, and read important materials and documents far exceeds that number. We, the homeowners, expect our directors to put whatever time and effort is needed to properly lead the management of our common area assets, adhere to the bylaws, and enforce the CC&Rs, and to maximize the potential value of our homes and properties. But many dedicated volunteer directors have to weigh these responsibilities with family and work requirements. Often the volunteer board duties get pushed to the back as a result. We are comparable to the city of Lakeport in size and population. Yet, over the past year, our board meetings were cut in half because of lack of commitment by some directors and moved to Saturdays mid-year to accommodate those same directors. Those changes caused conflicts, and several of those meetings dates were canceled. The president has the authority to call special meetings, but failed to call them, and this community has been operating void of leadership for much of the year. Can you imagine what would happen in Lakeport if their city council lacked the focus and professionalism that has been exhibited in this HOA? The current board leadership has failed us, and we need to take charge and demand more. As a director, I will commit to putting in all the effort and time that the job of leading this HOA requires. I believe going back to 2 meetings a month is essential in order to fulfill the responsibilities we face and to spend the necessary time to address these issues without rushing through them. Sometimes we may need special meetings in addition to the monthly meetings for important issues that come to us from time to time, like the budget workshops that often run 8 hours or more. Those meetings will be my priority. I cannot promise that I will have all the answers, but I promise I will try to find answers before I act. What I can promise is that I will take the job as your director seriously, and it will be my only job. Thank you.
Bruce?
Hello, I'm Bruce Brashares, and I'd like to thank you all for attending today. I'm a 14-year Hidden Valley Lake resident who started attending board meetings and volunteering on the Lake and the Golf and Green Committee 5 years ago. I was elected as a director in 2015, and I've served a year each as a vice president and secretary on the board. Now I'm running for re-election. With the obvious bias displayed by the election committee against a couple of candidates at the prior forum, I want to talk about the partisanship that has ruled the board over the past few years and now trickled down to the committees. In the 3 years I've served on the board, there have been 16 different directors and 5 different board presidents. The current majority has appointed their friends to officer positions while experienced board members are ignored. This leaves the members with inexperienced directors lacking financial and association knowledge leading the board. Nothing has been accomplished, and most oversight responsibilities have been delegated to the staff. The board selection of committees follows a similar path. The majority selects their friends while rejecting very qualified candidates not in their favor. A former board president who completed their term in good standing was repeatedly rejected, while an appointed and recalled director was selected for a committee. As was obvious from the last candidate forum, the election committee is not bias-free as it must be, and there have already been several complaints filed with the board. At the last meeting, a question was asked if it's ever within a director's fiduciary responsibility to boycott a meeting. Director Veerhard and myself decided that sometimes fiduciary duty requires that you do boycott and you draw attention to what is going on. When your suggestions continually fall on deaf ears, when there's not a single email or phone call from the president, and when mediation efforts fail, very few choices are left. We did not want to take legal action or start a recall. Those are solutions of last resort, so we chose to boycott a meeting with an agenda without any time-critical issues. The idea that our one meeting boycott in any way stopped the majority from conducting regular association business for the year is preposterous. Prior to the boycotted meeting, there were 11 regular board meetings where they had the clear majority and could have easily passed any motion that they chose. The only ideas they had were to eliminate the directors from responding to member emails and assigning it to the GM, and to move the twice-a-month meetings to once a month on Saturdays. We all know how well that's worked out. So now you see why I'm running as an alternative to the way business has been conducted the past few years. Assessments go up and nothing gets done. I believe all the candidates before you have good intentions, but who has done their homework and regularly attended board and budget meetings? We need directors who are willing to put in the time and the effort required, as I have shown I am. If you're ready for new leadership with a vision and the experience to get things done, please vote for Andy Wolf and myself. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
I am so glad I've only lived here 2.5 years, because I don't know any of this stuff. So for those of you who aren't here and are watching this on video, thanks for using social media to see what's going on in the community and express an interest. And those of you who are here, thank you for coming, some of you for the second time. I will just briefly restate some of the things I said last time. I moved here 2.5 years ago with my son. I really like living here. I find it to be a really good community, and when I bump into people in the community, I don't hear the kind of contentious dialogue that I've heard here today or in other places. I know that some of that is necessary and that there are issues that we need to resolve and discuss, but based on my experience in my professional work as a consultant, I believe in solutions. I believe that, you know, whatever the problem is, we've got to solve it. We can't sit here and yell at each other or convince each other of things that we can't convince each other of. We have to compromise. We have to come to solutions that are viable and that make sense for the future of the community. And I think that the most important things we need to face in the coming years are the ever-present dangers of the fires and how we are prepared for them with our wildfire safety plan. And we also have to have I believe we have to have a fiscally conservative outlook and view. We have to be careful. We have to have higher reserves than we do. And I think we have to be judicious in how we spend the hard-earned association fees and dues that people pay into the community. So I know that those are words. I know it's very difficult to make all of this square, and we'll be juggling a lot of things. If I'm selected as a board member, I know it'll be difficult. But I do not think that what is broken here is that we don't dedicate enough time to board meetings or that we don't do our homework. We are homeowners. We are volunteers that come to this space to try to solve problems with guidance from legal counsel and the association staff. And I think that, in my view, we can't judge how successful we are as a board based on how much time we burn in these meetings. I think we have to move beyond those kinds of metrics and start looking at outcomes and look at what is the state of our buildings, what is the state of the golf course, the equestrian center, et cetera, and understand how, and make tough decisions. We're going to have to go to you, the members, and talk about how we're short on funds, and we have to make tough decisions about dredging the lake versus improvements to the Greenview or putting up the community center, which I think is also very important. So for me, we need to move away from partisanship, away from these sort of what I consider pretty brutal tactics that seem to reflect what's happening at the national level, which I don't really care for. I think we need to move away from that, and we need to move into difficult discourse and then come to solutions. The other thing I'm very focused on would be focused on as a board member for you would be younger membership. I think we have a younger demographic coming into the community. We need to think about how we're taking care of the future of who's going to live here and how we're going to attract people who are working, who have the income to buy houses here and want to live here. And thank you for the time. Thank you. I'll go to stop.
Question number 1, and this we're starting with Steve. There is a good deal of underdeveloped land in Unit 9 that poses a fire hazard due largely to dense brush. Some of this land is private lots and some is owned by the association. How high a priority is bringing this land up to some standard of fire safety?
Good question. It's a priority. Obviously, I think the priority is wildfire prevention for this community, and I think further, that there's the opportunity that should be presenting itself. That's killing two birds with one stone. That's a problem with this community, and that is home maintenance, property that affects property values, and then the wildfire. So I think, when you look at what the lessons have been learned from the the Valley Fire, the Sonoma Fire, and so forth, the problems that the firefighters have had with all the junk that's in the yard, or all the, they can't get in and fight fires, whether it's equipment parked or whatever, and then all the fuel that's surrounding homes and so forth and so on. So I think those are two things, like I say, killing two birds with one stone is the ability to not only focus on wildfire management and prevention for any community, and this one in particular, lessons learned, and then two, to be able to say that, not only is it a health hazard, it's a wildfire hazard, and frankly, it's an aesthetic hazard, so you can kind of take care of a lot of different things by trying to focus on something like that.
Thank you. Andrew?
I think it's extremely important, and I'm kind of bothered by the fact that once a lot or a home becomes non-compliant with taking brush down, it takes so long for the HOA to be able to go in and rectify the situation and build back the homeowner. I think the notice, instead of 30 days, should be 72 hours. I think we should have people ready to move, to go in and cut these weeds. After 72 hours, if they haven't complied, then we need to go in. We need to take care of the problem, bill the homeowner, and then for the next 3 years, we need to do it automatically before the deadline. This is nothing to mess around with. These people that are not compliant are putting us all in danger. The onus needs to be on them to comply, and we should not have to sit back and babysit them and wait 30 days before we force them to comply. We need to get tougher, and we need to act sooner.
Thank you.
Okay, I think fire prevention in all areas of our association is a top priority. On the private lots, as Andy mentioned, right now we are a little bit hindered by our rules and regulations that we have to give notice for a certain period of time, and then the homeowner gets time to react. And I know from being on the board that the staff does work very hard on getting those notices out, but there are a lot of deadbeat owners out there that don't respond. So solutions of shortening the limit or something like that, I would be very willing to look into that so we can respond more quickly. Regarding the association lots, in the upcoming budget, we've put in $280,000 a year, I think, for the next 5 years to take care of excess fuel on association lots. So hopefully very soon, you'll be seeing a lot more effort in that regard, at least through the association lots. And I think just the whole fire danger and safety in general, Director Veerhard and myself asked for a special meeting on fire safety at the beginning of August when fires were burning around us, and wanted to get the community together to discuss what are we doing. Even as a director, I'm not sure of all the things that we're doing for fire prevention or what they're costing. What can we do and what should we do? So that meeting is finally coming up this Thursday at 6:30. So I'd recommend that everyone that's interested in fire safety come. There'll be a lot of time for member input, and we could make it clear what we're doing and what else we should be doing, because it is a top priority.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's clearly a top priority. It's always a question, I think, of funds and timing. It seems to me that with the non-compliant lots, you've got to bundle those together, issue a clear warning about what steps will be taken when, following the CC&R. So I think there should be, I'm sure I do not know this for a fact, but I'm sure that we can or do contract for bulk removal. And we should make sure that we do that in a way that is very cost efficient and try to do all non-compliant lots and other properties that need it at the same time. And then issue a clear warning ahead of time, 3, 4, 6 months in advance, saying this is what will happen by month 1. This is how much you'll be penalized. And if you don't take action, this is what happens by month 2. And then if you don't respond, we will take action. And I believe that one of the problems here with non-compliant and let's say deadbeat property owners is that we do not have a good stick in terms of taking action if they just don't respond at all. And so I think we should be working with the legal staff, and we should be looking maybe at the county level to see what we can do so that we can have a final stick so that there is some action or that we have some recourse if there is no action. I look forward to the fire safety meeting this Thursday. I'll be there.
Thank you. Starting with Andrew. I have seen this campaign slogan, "We can do better," and "no more business as usual." Please name one specific improvement you have in mind to improve our HOA.
I think the biggest thing that we lack is a vision. We don't have goals. We don't have set goals. That when you go in and you look at this situation, at the HOA, does anybody really know what the end game is? What are we trying to accomplish on the board? What's the end goal? Is it to increase our property values? Is it to enhance our amenities? Is it a little bit of all of it? We don't have set goals that we can work through. Every board I've ever served on, we had an end game. So every time we made a decision, we looked at what's this going to do to achieve our end goals. And we lack that. We're kind of like just treading water. We don't really have any place to go or any direction on how to get there. We're putting out little fires all the time, and we're not looking at the big picture. I think what we have to do is we have to set goals, and we have to let the community know what those goals are and what we're doing to achieve them.
Great, thank you. Bruce?
Okay, well, I agree with everything Andy said about having a vision and a direction for the association, and I think that goes hand in hand with communicating that, and I think that's another area besides not having a clear vision, and maybe that's why we're not communicating it, but we don't do very well as communication. We ask members to come to a forum and ask questions, and we'll respond to them, and then the board doesn't respond to them. We ask members to write emails to the board, and then the board doesn't respond and delegates it to the general manager. So there's a lack of trust, and I think the board needs to have more vision, more communication, more openness, and be more trustworthy to get members back in the fold, to get them believing that if they write to their directors that it'll be heard, it'll be discussed, and that maybe some action will be taken.
Thank you. Mark?
Okay, well that's, so the question is, I did not create those signs, but I'm happy to answer, but I'm not sure that would be appropriate. Can you repeat the question, by the way?
I'd be happy to. I've seen these campaign slogans, "We can do better," and "no more business as usual." Please name one specific improvement you have in mind to improve our HOA.
So I definitely think that without getting into a specific amenity or a hot topic issue for any one group of people here, I think that communications is really important. And I believe that the best way to achieve good communications is through transparency. And so last meeting we talked about videotaping or video recording the sessions, the open board sessions, or whichever parts would qualify per legal counsel as acceptable. I'm all for that. I sometimes watch Board of Soups online because I can't make it to Lakeport. I think being able to see what people up here are doing is important. When I came here as a homeowner, I didn't really feel the need to get involved with the board. I thought everything was running as smoothly, and I looked at the properties, and there were some that were good, some that weren't, but I just assumed everything was okay. Big mistake, obviously. But, you know, at the end of the day, we get involved, we talk to each other, we got to communicate. We got to have good communications. Part of what I think is really difficult in organizations like this is that we have turnover of people, we have turnover of residents, promises are made. We're probably making promises up here that we may not be able to keep at some point. You know, I'm going to try, but it's difficult because we don't necessarily have somebody keeping track in great detail in an accountable way of everything that we've said. So one of the things I like to try to do is to, again, from my consulting work, is to try to develop sort of top-level strategic task lists and then cascade those down as sub-level task lists that come to the committees, and working with the association staff and the GM to make sure that those tasks are actually getting completed, and then have some kind of measurement at the end of each quarter or year to say, how are we doing on our own tasks, what we said we're going to do, hold ourselves accountable to some extent, and make sure that we, and then report that transparently. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now starting with Bruce.
I didn't have a chance to address
I'm
it.
sorry, Steve. Please go ahead.
It depends on what we do in the next month. If we continue with business as usual, I think the single best thing that we can expect out of the board is to try and figure out how to get along once again. If we don't, if we change the way we've been doing business, I think the single most important thing is one of the things I addressed in my opening statement. And that, let me just repeat, we need to focus on putting together a capital improvement plan, both near and long term, develop an achievable plan of finance that supports the capital improvement plan, plan the work, work the plan. Just as simply as that, and then communicate it so that we can get everybody rowing in the same direction. So that's my response to that.
Thank you. Okay. This is more of a comment, but it could be a question. We need street lights and sidewalks. This is a safety issue.
Okay, no, I could comment on that. Yes, since I've lived here, every now and then there's requests from the community for street lights or for sidewalks, those sort of things. I think in general, most people moved here to live in a rural community, and they moved here to see nice stars at night and not have the street lights and all those things. But I would be interested in looking at sidewalks. I know in the survey it came up very high. I don't know if it's as much sidewalks as walking paths. I think I looked at my own street, the width of the street. If we put in sidewalks, there wouldn't be room for parking along the street. What are we going to do with street parking? Who would pay for them? But it's an interesting concept. Maybe we could look at it like the sewers went in, that a particular street that wants sidewalks can vote on it. They can be assessed, and they could be a pilot project, something like that. But generally, I think we live in a rural community, and I don't really know the appropriateness, and maybe that we could find other solutions such as walking paths for those that want to get out and enjoy the community.
Thank you.
I feel that street lights and sidewalks, especially the sidewalks, is a very important long-term objective. I wouldn't call it a short-term objective because we have fire safety, the lake, the community center, Greenview, and many, many other things that are really pressing issues. But I think that speaking to the question of vision and what's the vision for this community, if we want to attract people to this community, we need to look at, what's around us in Sonoma and other places where there are, parkour places going in and things for young people to do inside the community. And I think sidewalks is a part of that. You've got to make this community walkable. We've got to get people to meet and greet each other and come together in the common spaces, and sidewalks are conducive to that. If you've got people whipping down the road and you don't feel safe, you're probably not going to do that as much. You're not going to take your dog out for a walk as easily, or you're going to feel pressured, and you're not going to be happy with the traffic running by, which will make you anxious, angry, and it'll make you come to these board meetings and then yell at us. So I think that it's very, very important, but I believe it should be part of a bigger plan of how we reinvigorate this community. I'm interested in talking about maybe radical things like skate parks or parks where parkour, where kids can climb on walls and adults can do the same. So things like that, and then connecting all of those things, and perhaps including partially parts of the greens that are not used by the golfers, to create little green shortcuts across the community to get people from one side to the other, and then integrating all that into the sidewalk part. The street lights I'm not sure about, just because I realize it's a safety concern. It seems to make sense to me, but I would echo what Bruce said here about the beauty of being in this beautiful star-lit view at night, and that would take away from that. So maybe limited time frames. These are all hugely expensive things. Thank you.
I kind of echo a little bit of what has already been said. You know, a lot of communities around the country are moving to, I think it's called dark skies or something like that, light pollution. I love sitting out in my driveway in the backyard and I can actually see the Milky Way. So my concern, you know, even to echo a little bit what Mark just said, there's maybe a longer term objective to continuing that discussion. But at this point, that's kind of why you move to a rural community, is to not to have those kind of things. Like I say, you know, I'm not like this, you know, fantastic stargazer, but boy, I enjoy being able to see, you know, all the stars at night. And then secondly, the sidewalks. I'm sitting here thinking, wow, you know, the way we do, you know, because it's curb and gutter, the way we do the drainage around here with the drainage ditches. You know, sidewalks are, you know, 3-4 feet wide. How do you? That's a really significant, you know, improvement, I guess, to our community. But how you would actually go about doing it, again, I think it's already been said. Maybe that's a long-term commitment, but you know, there's a lot of things that we need to be spending money on, and that's one of the things that, as I mentioned before, you know, that's a longer-term capital improvement program, but very difficult to do in a community that's as far along and developed in how we do streets, curb and gutter, and drainage systems here. That's an expensive proposition.
Thank you.
As far as the street lights go, from most of the people I've talked to, they wouldn't want it. Like everybody else says, they like to be able to view the skies at night and not be distracted by all the city lights. It'd be interesting how a vote would come up on something like that. So far as the sidewalks go, the assessment to do that would be horrendous. And I think we would also sacrifice parking. But I think there's some things that we can do that are less expensive that we could maybe work into our long-term plan, and that's to make walkways along some of the major roads that are safe. In other words, have a marked walking area that's not paved with gutters and drainage, but just have it safe from car traffic, where people can walk and not be putting their lives in their own in danger. Similar to what like Sonoma County and some of the other counties are doing with bike lanes. We could do that with walking lanes, and we could probably get by with maybe 3 feet right away. We couldn't do it everywhere, but we could find places that we could do it that would make it more convenient for people to walk. Short term, I think that would be the better alternative. Long term, if we get everything else done, all of our buildings are up and all the other amenities are taken care of, and we have money flowing into our reserves that we don't have a use for, then maybe we can look at doing some areas with that. That's very long term.
Auto ticket.
Thank you. Okay. All right, starting with Mark. As a director, will you support the survey results and work to fulfill the needs and wants of the community?
Absolutely. First of all, I haven't seen the survey results, so I don't know what's in there yet, but I'm looking very much forward to hearing what you all have to say. I filled it out twice because I somehow screwed up and went to a different page at the very end of it, and I was very frustrated, and then I filled it out again. So I think I got all my answers in there that I wanted. I think absolutely. Like I said earlier about making priority lists and holding ourselves accountable to those, that's what I want to do. I'm going to look at that survey. I want to, if I'm elected, I would sit down with the rest of the board and enumerate, prioritize those items, and then sit with the finance committee and discuss how this all works with the budget that we have and the plans that we have for capital improvements, and then get to work. So absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Of course. Again, it's something I stated in my opening statement. It needs to be taken as seriously as our election process. It's what you all want. That's what we're here for. It's not our own personal agendas. I may not agree with what is in that survey. I probably won't. But again, it's something that you all as a community, you elect your board of directors for a reason. You did that survey for a reason. We darn well better be following it. So I think, yes, it provides us future direction. and it's guidance. It's not gospel. It shouldn't be treated as such. Again, as I said earlier, I don't view any of this as an either/or. It's not, something that we need to take care of one part of our infrastructure or the aesthetics that we have in this community, our assets, at the expense of the other. We need to figure out how to eventually address them all. So yes, absolutely, it's going to provide the guidance that you all as a community have directed this board to take.
Thank you. Andy?
As a director, our primary responsibility is fiduciary responsibility. So the survey is important to guide us in what we do first, as long as it's fiduciarily, as long as it's a responsible thing to do. I mean, like I know sidewalks were really high, but we can't build sidewalks and let buildings dilapidate or let other amenities go. We've got to look at it and try to work it in. We can't just use the survey as a checkbox. We can't check off this first and this second and this third. We've got to do it in a responsible way, and we've got to protect all of our existing amenities. And we can't, we have reserves for most of them, but if we have one building that's falling apart and the survey puts that down on the bottom of the list, we still got to fix that building, because if we let it fall apart, it's going to cost us a lot more. It wouldn't be the responsible thing to do. So we've got to do what the community wants, but we've got to do it in a responsible manner.
Thank you. Bruce?
Okay. Yes, I would support the wants and the needs of the members as expressed in the survey. Actually, I was the director that brought the bar forward, the board action request, to go find an outside professional survey firm and get the thing started. So I'm glad the board agreed with me. I've been a little disappointed the way the process has gone. I felt the questionnaire could have been a little bit better. Felt sorry for the delays. I don't understand all the delays in getting the information back to the members. But I am looking forward to supporting the results of that. I'm looking forward to the planning committee that we're going to be putting together, that will be working with the board along with the McMahon group on coming up with our future plans. And again, I agree with Steve. It's guidance. The survey is guidance. It's not gospel. I thought that was a good phrase. I think the board is looking to quickly respond on some of the items. There are some items that are not big ticket items that the board possibly could do sooner than later, and I'm hoping that the board will move forward on those to show that we are paying attention to the response and we do want to act. And then I'm looking also forward, as I say, to the long-term efforts of the planning committee and their future plan for our community.
Okay. This is, the person wrote yes or no. Will you support the recall of sitting board members?
That's not a question that can be just yes or no without an explanation. I would say that yes, unless things are made, changes are made at the board level to be able to put in the time to get the job done and to do what is necessary to keep the direction and the all the business of our community going forward. Right now, it's like we're treading water. We can't continue to do this. I mean, we've been doing it for several months now, and it can't continue. You know, there's either got to be huge changes in the attitudes and the actions of the board, or yes, we need to replace them.
Bruce?
So far, I've tried to stay out of that. I think it's a director should try to stay out of the recall if they can, but I also agree a little with Andy that, and I've trying to stay out, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I've tried other things first. I tried to boycott a meeting. I've tried a lot of things to let the members know really what is going on, short of a recall or short of legal action. That's another thing that's we're now starting to face. But I think we should try other things first, but ultimately, if the members are not satisfied, I think that is their right to have a recall, and it's in our bylaws, so it's up to the members to decide.
Thank you.
Oh, boy. Look, I mean, every time we recall and impeach people and take them down, I think we waste a tremendous amount of time and energy. I mean, I think things like impeachment, I would say recalls should be at the level of an impeachment process. They should have very high bars for very dire or very dangerous behavior, very crazy actions. And I do not see how you can get into a recall process with good, upstanding citizens of this community doing their best to try to run this community. Everything I've seen of the board members, all the board members, when I've attended board meetings, seem to be, aiming for professionalism, attempting to maintain a reasonable discourse, and I don't like yelling and screaming and threatening and having things taken off the rails to get what you want. If there's some egregious act that's been committed, then that should be discussed and shared with the community. But I don't really believe that this rises to the level of recall, the current situation. So, in my opinion, absolutely not. I do not think it's a good idea, and I think it just continues to erode the trust and show that we can't get things done up here. And so, I would strongly resist efforts to recall anyone, and I would love to see the rules that we have for that and make sure that they have very high standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 6, starting with Andy. In your opinion, what part does the board of directors have with qualified financial oversight to staff operations? I can repeat.
As a director, the only staff that we have contact with is the general manager. We can't go to members of the staff and tell them what to do or direct them in their jobs. That's not our responsibility, and we're not even allowed to do it. So as far as directing staff goes, that can't be done. But we need to be able to give the GM guidance on how to fulfill our objectives and the agenda of the board. And then if the GM doesn't do that, then we have a meeting with the GM and we discuss it there. But the GM has to have the contact with the managers and with the staff. It's not a board responsibility, or we really don't even have the authority to do it. Talking about financial oversight, our responsibility is to oversee the budget, yes, which and to have controls. The treasurer should be able to.
Okay, thank you.
Do you guys, I'm not sure if the question is oversight of staff?
That's,
is that,
that was confusing to me. Yeah.
I mean, can we discuss that amongst ourselves?
I would say, answer it how you want. You get to go last, so you can decide.
Just so we're all understanding the question as it's asked. I mean, if you understand.
It's a little hybrid. It's not quite.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
some people write bad questions.
It's apples.
I think it's a good question, but oversight of staff was throwing me.
Write questions badly. What can I do?
Yeah, good questions written.
Yeah, I'm going to take the financial oversight. Andy kind of did the staff part about the general manager, but I think the real question is the board responsible for overseeing the overall finances of the association? And yes, they definitely are. Davis Sterling by law actually requires that the board review the budget on a quarterly basis. So by law, the board is responsible for reviewing the financial statements. The board even goes further than that and appoints an officer, a treasurer, who's supposed to work directly with the staff, and they provide many more oversights. They do the check runs, the balance sheets, a lot of other things. They provide oversight. And that's an area where we've been concerned lately that we might not be getting all the oversight that we need, but it's definitely one of the important roles that the board has. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad I'm third on this one. You know, to me, this makes me think about the question that came up last session about the property management company, right? It's the board's responsibility to ensure that we are meeting our obligations and fiduciary responsibility to the community, and that includes the budget, the proper use of that budget and how it's managed. Now, I don't think that goes down into the weeds, into the details of staff. Clearly, that's the GM's responsibility. But the board has the option to choose how the association is managed from a big picture standpoint. And that could be a property management company, that could be a bunch of staff that is hired by the GM, and the GM has that responsibility. So I think that definitely there has to be a fairly tight oversight over that and how it's going. And then there has to be delegation to treasurer and the committees, I think, too, to get feedback on how things are going on the ground. I don't think we have the time as board members to get down into the weeds and start monitoring individuals or monitoring individual activities. I think we should be looking at budgets and the performance reviews that will come from the GM in terms of how the staff is performing, and then make big picture decisions based on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, my mind's going a lot of different directions in this. I think it's an excellent question, and I would respond by, of course, it's one of the most fundamental aspects of a board. You all want to know that your money is being watched and properly accounted for and used and spent on it. So oversight, financial oversight, is, like I say, paramount to the fundamental duties of the board. Further, I think the board, at some point in time, again, as I talked about a plan of finance, needs to look at, as we've developed the capital plan, what's that plan of finance? Obviously, as currently happens today, each department head comes up with their budget and so forth. That you as a board and we as a community, I think all together we live and die by that. And we need to bite off on the budget, which ultimately, filters its way up to what our revenue side versus the expense side of the whole capital of the whole plan of finance is. So, yeah, I mean, again, good question. I think one that maybe I'm sorry I'm rambling here a little bit, but it's like I say, it's fundamental to the obligations that the board has is to provide financial oversight. So.
Thank you. Starting with Bruce, I would like to hear your thoughts on rebuilding amenities.
I think we definitely need to do it. All our amenities are falling down. Witness the community center falling down. The Hartman building will be falling down soon as well. We have a lake with sediment that's not being removed from it. We have a maintenance building that's not being built. So I think that's all that needs to be taken care of, and that's something that the Planning Commission needs to look at along with the survey results and working with the board and itemize what order we want to do these in. We did have an order until the Clark case came along. A lot of that would have already started this year, but now we're taking $800,000 per year that we would have been putting into the reserve fund that we're not. So all the repairs are going to need to wait a little bit longer. But we do need to get at it. They are tearing down. That's one thing that I can promise is that we will get moving. If I'm a director with a new leadership, we will get moving on rebuilding the buildings before they fall down. And I think we need to look at all of them and what state they're in and how they serve the community. And there are a lot of questions to ask when we finally decide what order we need to do them in.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, these are those really tough questions. Of course, significant head nodding, yes, 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 rebuild the amenities. And then the question becomes when, what order, and how. I believe that we are tasked with maintaining the amenities to the original amenities that were here when the HOA was formed, and that we cannot remove amenities. I do not know the legal nuances of when you rebuild amenities, how closely they have to be rebuilt to the standards, sizes, square footage, et cetera, of the original. But I think if we can, I would vote for being creative there. For example, the community center, I'm not sure, I think the planning committee and others would want to get together and discuss how that building should be used in the future, and then come up with creative ways of how to rebuild it in a efficient, lean way, and possibly make parts of the spaces outdoors so that they're cheaper. So we have roof coverage, and we have outdoor activities, but we don't necessarily have to rebuild square foot by square foot the entire building that was there before. I don't know if that's possible, but if it is, and if it's legally possible, I would be very strongly in favor of that so that we can get moving on these things and not necessarily and be lean in terms of how much we spend. The dredging of the lake, in my opinion, is a long forgotten, long abused notion that nobody's really picked it up, as far as I know, and talked about it aggressively. And I think that that is one of those, it's one thing if a building falls down, we all see it, we all get excited about it, or torn down, and we want to rebuild it. That's fine. But this lake is this silent sort of disaster it's filling up, and one day the jewel of this place and part of the name of this place will be kind of a swamp. And so I think that that's a really high priority, and there are many more, but I don't have time.
That's again part of the plan that we need. The survey is going to provide us with some of your thinking on that. Mark already kind of hit on a couple things that I was writing down here. We need some out-of-the-box thinking on how to address all the amenities. Each one, I'll make a quick comment about the survey. It's like, I don't think anybody here needs to know. These buildings have been not maintained for years. We got to do something. So we need some out-of-the-box thinking on how to handle them. We got into what I would call sort of a crisis management when the community center / country club kind of fell apart, and also we had to do something very quickly. Need to avoid that. Some out-of-the-box thinking is, maybe we build some of these things in phases. Maybe we use different kinds of structures. I think a pretty good example of the structure is the shower house that we built around the pool. What's wrong with that building? It looks pretty nice. We can't afford, if you go back several years to the plan that was presented, a $6 to $8 million green room complex. There's just no way that we could now think of over time if we would have done something in those days to build. We could have had the benefit of the revenue. We could have had the benefit of capitalizing it. We could have had the benefit of the use of all that stuff for all these years that we could have been building on these amenities if we would have done it in a cost-effective, methodical, pragmatic process. I guess that's kind of my view.
Thank you. Andy?
Over the years that I've been here, there's been thousands and thousands of dollars spent on consulting fees and plans and building plans, and as far as reconstructing and rebuilding various scenarios with our amenities that are falling apart. None of them have been used. That money has just been wasted. They're no longer pertinent now. When we've got amenities that are falling apart, and we're going to have to replace them. We're going to have to do it when it's most financially at the time that financially we have to do it. Otherwise, it's going to cost us more. We've got to minimize what we spend on it. Another thing, I was listening to Sherry when she did her statement last year, and she was talking about what was wrong with the lake and with the dredging, and she mentioned the silt traps. She mentioned the same problems that this year have not been solved. The same goes with all of our amenities. We've got to quit kicking the can down the road. We've got to get staff working on getting the permits, getting this done. We can't just keep doing strategic planning. We've got to start doing some doing. People aren't seeing anything for the money, and yeah, we got to get busy. We got to get this place built back up.
We see more and more complaints about the health of the lake. Boaters and swimmers are having trouble navigating through the horrible weed problem. This is a problem because the lake is getting shallow, because the lake has never been dredged. How important is this to you?
It is extremely important. I only learned about some of these issues by attending a couple of lake committee meetings and trying to understand what was going on there. And it does sound pretty important. It does sound, though, I will say that this is not a throw money at it kind of solution type of a problem, as far as I understand. My understanding is that this is somewhat complex because we've got, we need to put the material somewhere. We need to work with, I believe, Caltrans on some access issues for where this material may end up going. And there's some interdependencies there that, as far as I understood, were kind of complex. And so I can't claim to understand all of the details of how this is going to get done, but I will reiterate that it is a very important priority for me. And we do, not only do we have weeds and people having concerns about that, we have an increase, I believe, having used the lake a lot the last 2 years of leeches, small leeches that are living in the weeds and in the muddy parts. And the marina, I think, also needs, you know, attention so that people can enjoy their boating and their fishing and their other activities on the water with the powered craft that they use. So it's very important. I think that we do have money put aside, but it's somewhat phantom money. It seems to appear and disappear. And so I hope that we can address that issue of whether we're actually allocating funds to it. Thank you. Do we have 2 minutes, by the way?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, and I would suspect that the survey is going to tell us that. I think it's one of the most important things that we need to address as the community, and unfortunately, I think it's one of the most difficult things to address as a community. Mark and I think are a little bit on the same wavelength here, and my concern is, and maybe this has already been established and looked at enough. I haven't read the studies that have been done on the lake, but you know, like so many things in our country or in a community or whatever, and Mark made the statement, throw money at it and it fixes. I want to make sure when we do this that we're doing the right thing, that there aren't some unintended consequences from dredging the lake. Is it going to be, are we going to have a fish kill? And if it is, if that's going to cause a problem, what have we done to plan for that? What are some other things that, you know, we need to make sure of? In the Midwest, I lived on a pond, backed up to a pond, and the county came in and did some dredging work and literally punched a hole in the bottom of the pond, and that pond turned into just a swampy marsh over time, never came back. I'm not at all saying that's what's going to happen here, but I just want to make sure, all I'm saying is that, again, Mark put it so well, we're not just simply throwing money at something to get it done because we all know it's got to be done. Let's make sure that the process that we're going to embark on for doing it is right, and we don't end up at the end of the day, well, we spent a lot of money in that, and we still have some, you know, some problems that we didn't solve.
Thank you. Andy?
I was talking to Steve, I can't pronounce his last name.
Stevie.
Yeah, that does the lake reports, and he was saying that the grasses are healthy for the lake, and we can't take all the grass out. We can do some grass removal, but if we do it all, the clarity of the lake, it acts like a filter as far as keeping the lake clear. I think maybe we could do more to get it away from the beaches, like Little Beach, I think, has got a lot of grass there that needs to come out. And as far as the dredging of the lake goes, I know that we need silt traps to keep from spending money to dredge it and then have it fill up again after a couple of rainy years. So we've got to do that the right way too. And I know that there's been a lot of effort being put into this, but we're not moving forward. And I think that's frustrating to the community a lot because we're not really being transparent. We're not letting the community know what we're doing and where we have to go to get this done. So it looks like, as an HOA, that we're ignoring it when we're not. So we need to communicate better, and we need to let people know what kind of permits have to be pulled to get it done and what we're doing to get those permits as fast as we can. There again, I think that there's a lot of concern because of the lack of transparency, and we just got to be honest and let people know what's going on.
Thank you. Bruce?
Okay, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I served 2 years on the Lake Committee before becoming a director, so I've been involved and interested in the health of the lake for nearly 5 years now. And when people say the lake's in bad repair and all, Some areas, yes, like the sediment removal, but overall, I think our lake's in very good health. Talking about Steve's very last report, he says that our lake has the best clarity that it's ever had just recently. You could see 30 feet down in the lake. So some aspects of the lake are very good. I think the sediment removal, as I say, is an important issue. I think it's something that the leadership of this board has dropped the follow-up on. The former IGM Rod Wood was assigned to work with Caltrans regarding the sediment issue, to build a sediment trap, also to see if they have some culpability for all the road works that's been done in the sediment that they put in our lake, that perhaps they could share part of the cost of the sediment removal. And he started on that, I think, at the beginning of the year, and we've heard one report and no other follow-up. So that's something that needs to be reinstigated or brought back. We're also, I understand, working on getting permits for sediment removal. So I think that's good. In the reserve study, you talked about the mysterious money that seems to come and go. It's pretty much stayed there. It's been $610,000, and I believe it's for 2020 or 2021 maybe in the budget. The problem with that is that that's for taking the sediment from the shores and pushing it to the middle of the lake. And so we're using that estimate, but I don't think that's the solution that anybody wants. The solution to actually take it out by trucks and work with Caltrans and find another place for it, I believe that estimate was 1.2 million last time we talked about it. And so that's probably gone up as well. So we do need to look at the options. Thank you. Perfect.
And this is question number 9, starting with Steve. Given the economic uncertainties, for example, the rising interest rates, how likely are you to support borrowing for new facilities?
I would support doing that simply because as we move through, you know, what I talked about, mentioning, sorry, sound like a broken record, a capital improvement program, that's simply one of the options that need to be looked at. I know y'all want to hear, no, I would never do that, I would never support that. But I think the primary thing that we all as a community want to hear, that our money is being spent and used wisely, and that you're getting the good bang for the buck. It's going towards the highest and best use that supports the most people within the community. And if at the proverbial end of the day it requires debt, I think that's something that has to be looked at as a final alternative look. I mean, it's the same thing as your household finances. It's the same thing as I looked at raising 3 daughters. Early on, you know, I had to take on debt and so forth because of the things that were needed. This community is probably no different. You know, we can continue to put off repairing and doing certain things, but if it requires something that's an emergency or really needs to be done, I think you can convince people that maybe taking on debt is an option that you could look for. So again, I'd be lying if I sat here and told you what you want to hear, that no, I would never do that, but I think it's just something that has to be taken a look at, and you ultimately are the ones that are going to decide on whether it's worth it or not. So,
Thank you.
I think we ought to look at the whole project. As you all know, building costs have gone up probably 25–30% over the last 2 or 3 years. The cost of materials is up, the cost of labor is up, even the availability of labor is limited. And sometimes it's the time to build is now rather than waiting. I mean, who knows what it's going to be like 5 or 6 or 7 years from now. So the cost of the interest on taking a loan may very well be less, add less cost to the project than not doing it. So we've got to just weigh all, I mean, we've got a general manager that's very good at putting those numbers together. We've got to let him make the presentation and determine whether the least expensive way to go would be going through a loan or waiting to put the money in the bank. Right now, with the way the economy's going, interest rates are going up, building costs are going up with the embargoes and everything that's happening nationally. So I think that it might be a good time to look at borrowing money to get it done sooner than later.
Thank you. Bruce?
Okay, I prefer not to borrow the money if at all possible. I'm really a pay-as-you-go and grow within our means type of person. I would consider it as an option if we all agreed on a project and we all agreed that it would be the best way to go, the best financing option. I would definitely consider it, and I think the double check of all this, if we did get a loan, my understanding is it would require a member vote. So I would be okay with that to let the members decide if the loan is the best thing.
I honestly don't have a good answer for that. I would have to defer to experts who could counsel the board on that. I would only apply common judgment, common sense and good judgment to try to make that decision. I mean, obviously municipalities issue bonds and have that power that to extend out in time the costs of things and stretch it out. So it's a challenging question. How fast will rates rise? That would be something I would leave to financial experts to advise us on.
How do you envision building up our reserve funds?
I believe that before the judgment came through with the lawsuit, we were putting like over $1 million into reserves every year just off of our assessments, which was a good plan. And I think over time that would add enough to where we could start getting these projects done. Unfortunately, for the next couple of years, it'll be substantially less than that. The only alternative would be a special assessment, and I don't know that the community would really go for that. We've got to be really responsible in our spending. We can't waste any money. The money that we spend has got to go for a purpose. We need to have goals. We need to have the big picture in mind when we spend money. What's this doing to reach our end goal? If we ever could come to agreement on what that is. But anyway, it's going to be slow because of the lawsuit. But I think in 2 years, it'll start kicking in again, and I think that we'll be really able to get some of these projects going. We've got money now to do some of the smaller projects. We've got reserves there in place. They need to grow faster. But I really don't think right now a special assessment would be the way to do it. It just needs to happen with time, and unfortunately we've got a delay. But it should resolve itself.
Thank you. Bruce?
Okay, I think unfortunately because of all the work that we have to do, all the neglect that hasn't been taken care of and all, that the reserves are going to be low, a lot lower than we would really like them to be for the next couple of years as we get this done. We can't let that stop us from moving forward. We do have plans, the projected budgets, that there are percentage increases each year on the amount that does go into the reserves. So we are increasing the amount that we set aside each year, but we just have so much to do. So I think we need to have a measured response, as I said before, to pay as we go and work within our means. Some of the suggestions that have been offered, when we do these buildings, let's look for lower cost options, different functionality of the buildings, not just build what we had before, but look at ways so that we could make things cost less and be more functional in doing so. But for the next couple of years, unfortunately, we are going to have low reserves.
Thank you. Mark?
So the way I approach this question is through the lens of transparency. The only way for us to understand where we are in this community is to feel the pain and see the pain. And so the only way to do that really is potentially to raise assessments. I think assessment rate increases, which are already happening, I believe at 10% next year or two, are, I think they should be tied to deliverables, some kind of deliverable in terms of buildings, lake improvements, etc. And they should have sunset clauses in them based on these deliverables being completed or not, and timed sunset clauses. and then a reevaluation of how much you up the assessment again if necessary. And then the other part of transparency is in the beauty and the efficacy of the amenities that we have. We have to, in some cases, if we have crisis situations with the community center, for example, or perhaps the State of the Greenview building, we have to look at how do we improve those buildings, but also at the same time cut back in those areas where we have things that have been running pretty well for a while. And those may be tough belt-tightening decisions that we have to make. But I think if we can't see if we can't see the results of what we're doing out on the streets at the homeowner level, inside of our amenities, in terms of what we're offering, and in terms of our assessments, if we don't see the connection between the assessments and what we're getting for them, and we actually see cutbacks and we feel that pain, I think that's the only way to make this transparent to ourselves so that we can then decide how much we want to spend. Thank you.
You know, reserve funds are great, and I think Bruce kind of addressed this. You know, it's nice to have a large reserve fund when you're flush with cash. Does anybody here think we're flush with cash? Those reserve funds would be used for the same things that need to be done right now. That's what you might use a reserve fund for. So, you know, having a lower reserve fund really is all about managing risk. We're going to be managing risk for a while by having a low reserve fund. And it's a nice connection that I'll make to one of the previous questions about what would, you know, what would be my view on taking on debt. Well, I'll tell you, one of the views, this is a good answer to that question. One of the reasons I might approve taking on debt is because our reserve fund is so low and we've got a major problem, folks. The hole just, you know, blew out of the bottom of the lake and we got to fix it. I mean, it's something major, and that would be a reason, you know, like I say, because we have a low reserve fund for the next few years to, you know, to take on some debt. It's just like, I'll go use the analogy I used a minute ago. It's like raising 3 daughters. You know, it was orthodontia, it was proms, it was weddings, it was colleges. I had very little to put away in a 401k, my reserve fund, until I had all those things taken care of. Now it's amazing how much I can put away into a 401k when my daughters are all married and have successful families of their own. So it's the same analogy that you use, I think, that's very apropos for what this community is facing. So again, it's all about managing risk is the reserve fund, in my opinion.
Question number 11, starting with Bruce. Do you have the time to attend meetings on either Saturdays or Thursdays?
Well, when I signed up for the board, the announcement said that it took at least 30 hours a month, and there was twice a month meetings on Thursdays. So for the last 3 years, I've made every Thursday for the board meetings available. I've actually made almost every day of the week. I'm retired now, so I'm available all the time. Saturdays is usually a day for family activities and things like that, so I'm not available every single Saturday, but if I knew enough in advance, I probably could be. So I agree with the question. It really takes a lot of time to be a director, just attending the meetings, being the liaison, doing all the homework, and being retired now, I have that time to dedicate, and I think I've shown in the last 3 years that I do spend the time needed to do the job.
Thank you. Mark?
The question was Thursdays and Saturdays?
Do you have the time to attend meetings on either Saturdays or Thursdays?
You know, I believe that as directors, we have to make the time, whenever it is. I think the question, the veiled question in that question is whether one day or another is better and why weekends, which is, I think, is a new policy here. And I'll tell you, you know, as a father, as a person who has to do, you know, various has commitments and work, I prefer the weekend, even though it sucks up time from family, because I don't think that this board has always been representative of the community. We can't have everybody up here who's retired who has 60 hours, you know, a week to dedicate to this quote-unquote job. I think we need to think smart, we need to outsource, we need to delegate, and we need to get people to help us do our job better. But I don't think we should be spending more than 30 hours in here doing this work. And I think that coming together on weekends gives families and community members who have families the opportunity to come visit and see what's going on. I think doing these meetings during the week is very difficult. So I'm open to creative solutions. I'm open to alternating if that's helpful. But I like having meetings on Saturdays as well.
Thank you. Steve?
I have a lot of favorite sayings, as you may have picked up. And one of mine that has to do with sort of answering this question is, when all is said and done, there's usually more said than done. I'm flexible on what meeting dates. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. If you want to meet, midnight Mondays, just let me know so I can plan my schedule around it. Just don't keep changing it, because all of us are busy. Let's just focus on when it is. But all this talk about the amount of time needs to be spent. I've spent my career sitting in long, drawn-out meetings. My God, when is it going to be over? Why are we talking about all these things? It has nothing, and I said this in my opening comment, it has nothing to do about quantity of time. Let's come in, get the business of the community done, the business of the community, not just the board, and talk about it and work through it, come prepared, and let's get in and get out and get on with our lives, because we all lead very busy lives. So that's my perspective on what day of the week it is.
Thank you. Andy?
Most of my working life, I worked 60 hours a week and then served on volunteer boards. So I was able to manage my time. And now I don't have a job, and I actually would welcome spending time doing board business. I would be able to go to committee meetings. I'd be able to read materials. I would be able to read into the materials even further than what we get. And I will go to board meetings whenever and wherever they are. It would be like a job to me, and I actually kind of miss not having a job, so I'd like to put a lot into it.
Thank you. Okay, so that is going to put us now at, from what I can see, 13 minutes after. So we have to allow 16 minutes for closing statements. So if you'd like to prepare for that. I believe we're going to start with Mark for the closing statements and work backwards.
How much time do we have for those?
4 minutes.
All right. All right, so thanks again for everyone to make the time to be here and hear us out. I am here applying for this board position because I care about the community. But I'm going to tell you right now, I don't have all the answers. I do not. I have a lot to learn. My goal, if I should be able to join the board, is to learn materials as fast as possible. And as I said just a moment ago, I really like the idea of delegating and relying on the committees and working with the people around you to help you become very efficient. I am in favor of transparency, and I believe we should act with as much integrity as possible as board members and really be upfront with our beliefs and share them openly as long as it's allowed in open session. And also be respectful of each other as board members and respectful of the people that live in this community, all of us who live in this community together. I also think that there's perhaps this isolation that happens when you're a board member. It seems like you get very busy dealing with the business of the community, but I would like to try to encourage us as board members to engage with the community as much as possible, to be present at as many of the open social events, and get as much feedback from all of you as possible. And my commitment is to vote with my conscience, with my heart, and to be as clear as possible as to why I'm doing so, and to look at the facts carefully, listen to everybody's opinion, and then make my decision. You may not agree with all my decisions, but I can guarantee you that they will be fact-based and as reasonable as possible. And if I'm challenged or conflicted, or I feel like I'm having difficulties making a decision, I will let you know. And I will let you know what I'm challenged or conflicted about. But I think you will see how I came to my decisions and why. I know this is a tough, thankless job. I've been on another couple boards before. So I ask all of you, if you see me again sitting at an actual board meeting, Please be patient. Please be kind. I think we're all doing this, out of the goodness of our hearts to make this a good community. And I will listen to you, but I'll listen to you a lot more if you don't yell and scream and call me bad names. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to thank those that are watching via social media. I want to thank the other candidates for volunteering their services to the association. During the last 3 years as a director, not all's been lost. I've worked very hard toward providing more transparency. We've heard that, and more communication. I've been able to bring forward motions that allowed a second member comment at the end of each meeting, doubling the number of chances for members' comments. For a short period of time, I was able to have a second meeting per month with member comments, now been done away with. I did a couple bars to strengthen the committees, to add a few new rules to match people with committees so that they're a better fit and they stay longer. I've acted as a watchdog for the board, that the laws and the procedures of the association were properly followed. I initiated the bar, as I mentioned earlier, for the outside professional survey and to have the McMahon Group work with us. And during all this, I've supported all of our amenities. So now hopefully you have a better idea of the background, the experience, and the vision of each of the candidates. Before I knew who the other candidates would be, I met Andy Wolf at a board meeting. He had been regularly attended, and we started to share our views and concerns with each other. We found that we shared many of them. I heard he was considering running, and we discussed running together. Now we offer ourselves to you as an alternative to the leadership of the past. Like another candidate, we feel that there should be no more business as usual. We ask for your vote to bring about a change for Hidden Valley Lake Association. Together, we can do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to clarify one thing right off the bat. In my opening statement, I made criticisms of the current board, and that is in no way a reflection of the board members. They're dedicated volunteers that have put a lot into this community. I didn't mean to attack them as individuals. What I'm against is the inaction of the board over the past 6 months. I feel like we're treading water. I'm very, very concerned as a homeowner. And we need to have things changed up. I would much rather see the current board make those changes and communicate them to the community so we can move on with who's there. But unless there's a commitment to change, as much as I like these board members and thank them for everything that they've done, I just think that we need to take different action. I also want to say that all the committee members that I've met are very dedicated. The Finance Committee, I can't believe the amount of effort they put into the budget after going to the budget workshop. We've got a lot of members of this community that love the community, that put in the time and are doing a great job. I hope at some point that I can be one of those people. But for anybody that thinks that I'm against them, I'm not. And probably one of the candidates that I was supporting most all year, in fact, is Sherry, because Sherry wants to support young families. But young families are paying a price by us not being able to move the association forward and by having houses depreciate rather than appreciate. Young families buy houses so that they can build equity and take equity out when they need to send their kids to college or need to pay for a wedding. And then again, when they get ready to retire, they can sell their house and downsize and take that equity out to live on. By not putting the focus of home values, number one, in the forefront, we're hurting young families. And it's not about building special amenities for kids right now, it's about building for their future. And I think that the value of our homes have to come first. So, Sherry, especially you, I'm not against you. Thank you.
Thanks for all your support. It's been unbelievable. I'm finding people want to know their money is being well spent and taken care of, they are being listened to, and that their votes count. The things that make Hidden Valley great, in my opinion, are three primary things. One, the geography/climate. Two, the people. And three, the amenities. These all make up who we are as a community. Most people in the world would love to have what we have here, and yet we can't get out of our own way to maintain it, let alone develop and improve it. We now have an opportunity to change directions and pull up out of this death spiral. Focus, people, focus. Everyone here, focus on what is happening in this community right now. Yes, we need a board of directors that can work together for the good of the entire community, and trying to do it by recall is not the way to do it. Isn't that business as usual? You need to stop this recall. If you don't, and the recall effort is successful, it will speak volumes of who we continue to be as a community. We need a new direction. We need out-of-the-box thinking to step up and solve our issues as a community rather than continue to not only exacerbate them, but to not even get out of the starter's box. We need a fresh start. Let's not bring the same pathetic, unreasonable methods of confronting our differences that we see on the news every day into Hidden Valley Lake. We're better than that, and we can control our future. Let's come together as a community and finally begin to change this insane path towards self-destruction we are on and forge a new beginning with a clear, positive direction forward. There's an old saying, lead, follow, or get out of the way. I'm not a follower. I've tried for too long to get out of the way. So now, given the chance, I'll help to try and provide leadership for this community, working with the good people who are already on this board, whom you have duly elected. Thank you.